Hello, my name's Tim Shoebridge. The title of this video is When Resolution Is Not Enough. Now I'm going to be featuring 4 Fujifilm cameras in this video. I'll show you them now. The X-H1, 24 megapixels. The X-H2, 40 megapixels. The GFX50R, 50 megapixels. And finally, the king of them all, the GFX100S, 100 megapixels. Now, the reason why I'm doing this video is like all the other videos I've ever done about camera gear. It's because I start off myself doing some tests, trying to figure things out, trying to understand what works, what doesn't work. And by the time I've gone through that exercise, I do sort of like ask myself, well, maybe I should put that in a video because maybe this will be information that's useful to somebody else. So I want to stress from the start, I own all 4 of these cameras. I've owned them for quite a long time. I know them very, very well. I feel qualified to talk about them. I don't know about most camera brands, but this particular brand and these particular models, they're mine and I use them. So that's why I'm going to talk about them. And I'm talking about them in a positive way. This is not in any way meant to be a criticism of Fujifilm or a criticism of these cameras. I absolutely love them. So I just want to get that straight from the start. This is my own sort of like tests, my own interests, my own reasons for looking at these cameras and looking at what they're capable of doing. And then I decided, okay, I'll put that in a video, maybe it'll be of use to you. So it is about resolution. We're going for a 24, 40, 50 and 100 megapixel sensor cameras. Obviously they're very, very different in terms of their capabilities and in terms of you know, how old they are in terms of the technology and stuff like that. So we're just really looking at resolution, and I'm going to be walking you through what I have been thinking, my thought process, and what I'm trying to do. And let me start off at the beginning, which is with this camera here, the X-H1. Right, so let's start with the X-H1, a little bit of history about this camera and about me and about why I chose it and why I use it. So I was originally a film photographer, got into digital. I'm also a musician. I also write music. I do a little bit of sort of filmmaking. I do want to sort of like put images to the music that I write. And so for me, whenever I go out, whenever I'm traveling, anywhere I go, I will equally take stills as I will shoot video. For me, video and stills are maybe 50-50 of importance. And you know, I used to go around lumbering around with 2 cameras, a video camera and a stills camera. And the panacea for me is to have both those capabilities in one single camera with one single set of lenses, a decent hybrid camera. And I've been looking for a decent hybrid camera for a very long time. I went through a number of different iterations. I used Sony cameras, Samsung NX1 for a little while, and then I came across the Fujifilm X-H1, and this was a breath of fresh air to me. It's got all of the things that I really want in a camera, a hybrid camera. It shoots very good stills, the image quality is beautiful, the colors are beautiful, the video here is you know, for the first time I think with a Fujifilm camera, kind of professional grade video, decent 4K, high frame rates. You've got a log profile in here as well. But of course you've got the benefits of a mirrorless camera, which has got IBIS inside it. It's so liberating to have a camera like this, just one camera, and be able to go anywhere, shoot stills and video equally. No tripods and gimbals and sliders and other pieces of equipment. It's all here in one. So I've used this camera for a long time. It's been my go-to hybrid camera for stills and video. And actually I had a couple of these cameras at one point. Now, there's always been, I guess, you know, with a hybrid camera, there's always compromises. It's not going to be the best stills camera you can buy, and it's not going to be the best video camera you can buy. It's a compromise. And it's a compromise that I've been happy with, apart from the resolution. 24 megapixels for stills isn't really enough for me. It's kind of borderline. I do print my own prints, and I do sell my own images. And even if I take a photograph of some iconic view, and I have no personal interest in you know, doing a big print of it, it might well be in the future that I can sell that image. Maybe someone wants to have a great big mural on their wall of my image. So there's this thing called future proofing. So resolution, you might not need the resolution yourself, but if you are professional or semi-professional and are kind of wanting to potentially sell your works of art in the future, then having them at sufficient resolution is actually a very good idea, whether it's video or it is stills. So future proofing is something that I'm very interested in. And so 24 megapixels for me is never really quite enough. And if you're sitting there looking at some gorgeous view, some iconic view, and you think, you know what, I'd really like to be able to shoot this higher resolution than 24 megapixels. Well, that's when you bring along another camera, and then you lose the whole kind of benefit of having a hybrid camera in the first place. So I was really chuffed and very, very interested in the X-H2 when it came along. 40 megapixels. It's got all of the hybrid qualities of the X-H1. It's got even better video capabilities, and as well as that, 40 megapixels. This should really be the hybrid camera panacea. It really should, right? So let's have a look at these two cameras and compare some still images. And we're going to do some pixel peeping, because at the end of the day, I can't really show you the detail difference between these two cameras without doing some pixel peeping on my computer, because you're going to be looking at this on probably an HD screen, which is a 2 megapixel screen, or maybe you're looking at it on a 4K screen, in which case that's just 8 megapixels. I'm going to have to zoom in to show you the detail, because the only reason for going from a 24 megapixel sensor to a 40 megapixel sensor is because you want the extra resolution, because you want the extra detail that this camera is capable of capturing. So that's what we're going to have a look at next. We're going to have a look at some side-by-side images shot with the same lenses with these two cameras. Right, so let's have a little comparison here of some shots I took in London across the River Thames, looking towards Southwark Cathedral, the Shard, and Guy's Hospital. And the first couple of images I'm going to choose are from shot with the 10 to 24 f4 zoom, the Super EBC XF lens from Fujifilm. It's a really wonderful wide-angle zoom lens. I have already gone through and figured out what are the optimum apertures to shoot at. I've done those kind of tests already. Here we're looking at the 10 to 24 shot at its maximum focal length, 24 millimeters. So we've got the X-H1 image on the left hand side, we've got the X-H2 image on the right, shot at exactly the same time of day. You can see the clouds have moved very slightly between these shots, so therefore there's slightly different lighting conditions, but otherwise same lens, same view, same time of day. Let's zoom into 100%, and you can see there now it's apparent that the X-H2 is the image on the right, because it's a lot bigger, because we've got that 40 megapixels of resolution compared to the 24 megapixels on the left, which is the X-H1. So let's have a look at the detail. I mean, this is what I'm really looking for, is does that extra resolution give me more detail? It gives me a bigger image when I zoom into it, but does it reveal more details that are not available to me with the 24 megapixel sensor? That is really the only thing I'm looking for here. I'm not looking at dynamic range, I'm not looking at any other aspects of the sensor technology, it's just the resolution that I'm interested in here. So we can see there's some fine detail on the cathedral and on the brickwork in the buildings in front. I look at this view and I shoot this view a lot with all of my comparisons and tests that I do of my own equipment. You can see that this is Guy's Hospital here, and there's a lot of paraphernalia at the top of it. There's aerials and stuff like that, and cables and things. There's a lot of detail here in these images that we can compare. There's the crane with the very fine cables you can just make out here with both images actually. You can see the same level of detail. Can we see any more? That is a very good question. Let's maybe zoom in even more than 100%. Maybe we can get a better look at what's going on here. Is there any more detail here? It's a bigger image on the right, smaller image on the left. Is there any more detail that's revealed in the image on the right? So that is the 10 to 24 lens. Let's look at another zoom lens. This is a pro quality Nano GI. It's the 16-55mm f2.8. Again, I have decided on the best aperture to shoot at to get the best level of detail, and we're looking at it at maximum zoom, so maximum focal length. We're looking at it at 55mm. Again, we've got the X-H2 on the right and the X-H1 on the left. Let's zoom in 100%, and you'll see there, oops, let's just put it back down to 100%. We're a bit too much at the moment. You can see there, obviously, we've got the increased resolution on the right-hand side. It's a bigger image. But again, let's look at that detail of the brickwork, of the cathedral, of the building in front of it. We can see actual sort of like the textures of the bricks on both of them. Does it look more detailed on the right hand side, or is it just bigger? Look at the top of that building again, the aerials, and this little crane here. And talking of cranes, let's look at the other crane. There we can clearly see the cables coming down from it. There's a sign there. It maybe looks a little bit better on the X-H2 versus the X-H1, a bit more easier to read. Wolf with an E on the end, that's the company name. Again, let's look at Guy's Hospital and look at the top of the building. Let's zoom in a lot more than 100%, up to 200% or greater, and see if we can see more details. Obviously the lighting conditions have changed very slightly between these images, but I'm really looking to see if there is a tangible benefit in the 40 megapixel sensor over the 24. Right, so far we have been comparing images shot with zoom lenses. These are premium quality zoom lenses from Fujifilm, but I do appreciate that they may not be the best lenses to get the best out of the 40 megapixel sensor of the X-H2. I have done a load of tests with all the lenses that fit onto my Fujifilm cameras. Trust me, I've got zooms, I've got primes, I've got Fujifilm lenses, I've got third-party lenses. The sharpest lens that I have got is actually not a Fujifilm prime lens, it's a third-party prime lens. It's a 40mm macro lens. So what I thought I'd do here is just show you the difference between that 40mm macro lens and the 16 to 55 lens that we were comparing before, just to show you the improvement that you get with the 40 megapixel sensor with that particular lens. So this is what we're looking at here. We've got the 40mm third-party lens on the left. We've got the 1655 on the right, set at hopefully a pretty similar focal length. These are both shot with the X-H2. Let's just zoom in and let's see if we can see a tangible improvement with the prime lens over the zoom, and yes we can. Obviously this is at 100% zooming in here, so we've got the same resolution, it's the same sensor, but you can clearly see that there is more detail, a better quality image on the left than there is on the right hand side. Just looking at the cathedral, looking at the brickwork, looking at the details that you can see there, it clearly is a better image with this prime lens. So then I'm thinking to myself, well, let's take this best lens that I've got with my 40 megapixel X-H2, and maybe it might be interesting to compare it with my Fujifilm GFX50R, because we're only talking about a 10 megapixel improvement in resolution between an X-H2 and a GFX50. I mean, maybe they are quite comparable. Let's have a go at that. So we're choosing the third-party 40mm macro lens on an X-H2, and I'm comparing it with this image here, which is shot with a GFX50R. I'm using here the kit lens. I call it the kit lens. It's the 35 to 70 lens. I have chosen the optimum aperture for both of these lenses. Unfortunately, the 35 to 70 lens at its maximum focal length isn't quite got the same field of view as the 40mm macro on the X-H2. As you can see, there's a bit more space around this image. It's smaller, there's more room there on the right hand. If you look on the right hand side, you can definitely see what I'm talking about. It's a wider field of view, which means that when we do zoom into 100%, we're not going to see the image on the right being bigger than the image on the left. In fact, it's very slightly smaller. Although it is greater resolution, it's a wider field of view, so therefore we are seeing a smaller image. But just look at the difference in image quality, in detail, between the X-H2 on the left hand side here and the GFX50 on the right. The difference in image quality, to my eyes, is kind of outstanding. It really is. The details in the brickwork, the details in the cathedral building, outstanding amount of image quality. Look at the clock face there on the cathedral, look at the brickwork. Let's look at the top of this building here and how clear the aerials are compared to the X-H2. This is the best lens that I've got for the X-H2. The glass, the detail, unfortunately the crane has turned around in between these two photographs, which is not very helpful. But look at the detail there of the crane on the right hand side with the GFX. Let's look at Guy's Hospital and all the paraphernalia on the top. The difference in detail is pretty staggering to my eyes. Let's go and zoom in even more, and it's so obvious, right? This is just a 10 megapixel difference, but the difference is just mind-blowing. You've got the texture on the side of the building, not just the sort of like the fine details of balconies and wires and cables and things like that. All these images, I haven't said so far, but all these images, I haven't sharpened them in any way. It's just the default sharpening that Lightroom does when it imports the images. I haven't touched them or fiddled with them at all. This is just basically what you get out of the box. Right, so you saw there that we've now jumped from X-H cameras to GFX cameras by looking at the GFX50R. I'll try and come up with some conclusions at the end of this video about what we're seeing in terms of detail, image quality and stuff like that. I'll try and come up with some ideas about what might be going on there. But as you can see, we have now moved on to the GFX50R. I've had this camera for a long time. I've used it a lot. I don't use it as a hybrid camera. It does shoot video, but it shoots just HD. It's okay. I would never use this as a video camera. But I have been for a long time eyeing up the GFX 100S and the 50S Mark II for a very good reason for me personally, and that is that these cameras, this camera here has in-body stabilization, which this one doesn't. And for me, using the 50R, and I had the 50S before it, the one thing that was really missing was image stabilization. Once you get into mirrorless cameras and you start relying on image stabilization and leaving a tripod at home, it is hard to go back to having to use a tripod again, and you do really need to use a tripod with a high resolution camera like this that's quite heavy, big lenses. Some sort of stabilization is really important, and so I have been eyeing up this one for a long time, this one or the 50S Mark II, image stabilization, and I ended up going with the 100S and trying it out, see what I thought about it, see what I thought about the resolution jump. So as that is what this video is concentrating on, about resolution, here we have a doubling of resolution from 50 to 100 megapixels. Surely we should see some serious improvements in image quality and detail capture between these two cameras. That's what I'm going to go into now and do a little side-by-side comparison. I'm looking at a slightly different view this time for no other reason than you're probably getting bored looking at the same view of London. So here's a very slightly different view. I'm using the same lens at optimum aperture again with both of these images. It's the 35 to 70 kit zoom, as I call it. I can't remember what focal length I was using here, but anyway, I'm focusing on that support for the Millennium Bridge there in the middle. So we'll zoom in on that point to start off with and have a look. We've got the GFX50R on the left, and we've got the GFX100S on the right. Let's have a look and zoom in. Obviously there's a lot going on, people moving across the bridge and boats and things like that, but we'll have a look at the static parts of the image and see if we can see any differences. So starting off, zooming in on Millennium Bridge itself, clearly we have a much higher resolution image on the right than we do on the left because it's a lot bigger now. But what I'm looking for, as always, is detail present in the image on the right that is not present on the image on the left. Look at the fine details of the bridge, the little supporting cables going across there. Maybe look at the building behind with the aerials on the top, and we have got Southwark Cathedral again underneath. Have a look at the image quality there and the level of detail that's available to us. Maybe the building in front, the brickwork, maybe the bridge. Let's have a look at the shard itself. See if there's anything there that we can see on the right that we can't see on the left. Guy's Hospital again. We're right at the very, very edge of the image, as you can see here, and I've got to say that this 35-70 lens, edge to edge, it's a wonderfully sharp lens. It really is fantastic. I mean, clearly the image on the right is bigger when you zoom into it than the image on the left, so therefore it's capable of being printed bigger. But is it? Maybe we should try enlarging the GFX50 image so it's the same resolution as the GFX100, same 100 megapixels of resolution, and then see actually if it really is better to blow up and enlarge the GFX100 image as opposed to the GFX50. Let's have a go at that now. Right, for this comparison I've moved indoors, a very, very boring image now, unfortunately, rather than London. It's just a little bit of still life, if you like. It's just some detail under controlled conditions I was able to shoot. First of all, we're going to look at these two images here. The one on the left is the GFX50R, and the one on the right is the GFX100S, both with the same kit lens, the 35-70, as I've been using throughout these tests. Let's zoom in and take a look. We have to wait here. The one on the right, the 100 megapixel image, it's loading. So let's wait for it to fully load so that we can actually see the detail from it. Right, there it is, fully loaded, and we can see that there is a lot of detail here to look at with these images. Much, much bigger image, obviously, on the right hand side. It's twice the resolution. But is there more detail there that we can't see with the image on the left? That is the question for me. And so what I want to do is take that image on the left and enlarge it, blow it up, make it a 100 megapixel image, and then compare it to the GFX100S image and see if there is any real difference, because that is something that we haven't done so far. So this next image here, number 2, it is exactly the same image as the first one. It's from the GFX50R, but I have edited it in Photoshop and I've enlarged it. All I've basically done is choose image size and change the image size to be the same as the GFX100S. So they're both exactly the same resolution. So let's compare this one to the GFX100 and see what the difference is. Right, so here we are again, GFX50R on the left and 100S on the right. We're going to zoom in and we should see that there is no difference in size now. They are both the same resolution. They're both 100 megapixels in resolution, same dimensions. Photoshop has kind of made it up when it has actually blown up the image. And to be honest with you, the image on the left is looking quite a lot sharper than the one on the right. I'm presuming that is the Photoshop algorithm that has done that. It is looking a lot sharper and cleaner than the one on the right hand side. I just chose the sort of like the automatic algorithm in Photoshop for doing the enlargement. I didn't do anything fancy with it, but it does look a little bit sharper. I'm wondering whether or not we should maybe try sharpening the GFX100 image very slightly. Maybe this is not such a good comparison. So what I'm going to do is just go in here, edit the GFX100S image, and we'll just zoom in on it and apply a little bit of sharpening. It's set at 40 at the moment, which is the default for Lightroom when it imports any of these Fujifilm images. I'm just going to increase the sharpening a bit. Don't want to do too much. It's already looking too much as far as I'm concerned. That's just way too much. Let's go back to about 70, 75, something like that. It's still looking a little bit over sharpened as far as I'm concerned, but we'll go with that. And now let's do that comparison again between these two images. Zoom in. Now it's going to have to reload that image on the right hand side because we have edited it. So let's just wait for it to render. There we go. And now let's look at the level of detail there. Is there really any tangible difference between these two images? Apart from the color, that's clearly different. Is there really any difference in detail? Is there anything missing from the one on the left that we can't see in the one on the right? Or does it look worse because we've enlarged it? Let's go over here to this bottle of wine I've got here. To be honest with you, no, maybe I shouldn't say, but I think the image on the left, the 50R image, looks nicer than the one on the right. Okay, so time to wrap up this video. Some kind of conclusions, if we can draw any conclusions. I don't know if we can. Let's just talk about the different comparisons, and let's see if you kind of agree with me broadly as to what I see with those comparisons. So let's start off with the X-H1 versus the X-H2. So we're going from a 24 megapixel sensor to a 40 megapixel sensor. That's a jump of 67%. Now, in terms of image quality, in terms of detail, I don't know whether you'll agree with me, but I saw very, very little improvement between 24 and 40 megapixels. Purely on detail alone for stills, I wouldn't see a valid reason to upgrade from the X-H1 to the X-H2. The X-H2 is far more than just a 40 megapixel sensor. Don't get me wrong, there are many, many other reasons for upgrading to an X-H2, but purely based on resolution itself and about the image quality of stills specifically, and the detail, which is what I'm looking for in this upgrade, I can't really see it. Now, maybe I'm not using the best lenses. Maybe I need to sort of like go back to the drawing board and figure that one out. However, the one comparison that blew my mind was the X-H2 versus the GFX50R. So we've only got another 10 megapixels here with the 50R. We're going from 40 megapixels to 50. That is a 25% increase in the number of pixels. And for me, the difference in image quality between these two cameras is absolutely mind-blowing. I was kind of contemplating, going back to the drawing board with the X-H2 and looking at what other lenses I could find to fit to it to see if I could get some improvement with the detail. And then, of course, I went, hang on a minute. I don't think I'm ever going to match the 50R, the GFX50R. The image quality out of this thing is just gobsmackingly brilliant. We'll come on to the reasons why that might be in a minute. And then finally, let's talk about the 50R versus the 100. And again, I hope you agree with me that the difference in image quality between these two, the difference in the amount of detail that you can get between these two cameras is so small. It's really very, very, very small. I honestly think that you wouldn't notice the difference unless you labeled the images 50 versus 100. And we're talking about 100% increase in resolution here, 100% increase in the number of pixels between the 100S here and the 50R. It's a massive doubling. It's a doubling of the number of pixels, and yet the difference in terms of detail is pretty much zero. It's almost zero. And so you have to ask yourself why that is. Well, either resolution in itself doesn't give you better images, so we've all been sold a lie by the camera companies for a very, very long time, or there are other factors going on here. Now, I've mentioned lenses already, and I do think that probably the quality, the image quality that you can get from the lenses goes a long way to maybe understanding what's going on here. Let's take the Fujifilm X-H1 and X-H2. Now, these XF lenses, how many of these lenses that Fujifilm provides were designed with a 40 megapixel sensor in mind? Let's face it, we've been stuck with 24 megapixels APS-C sensors for many, many, many years, and before that 16 megapixels. So would they really, Fujifilm really have had the foresight to actually put a whole load of extra effort and money into their R&D to produce lenses capable of resolving 40 megapixels or more before this camera was ever a possibility? I really don't think so. So I really do think that the lenses that I'm using with these two cameras were never designed to resolve 40 megapixels. And I think that that's probably the main reason why, even though I have a 40 megapixel camera in my hand now, I can't see the benefit of it. And so basically I'm waiting for Fujifilm or some other manufacturer to provide me with a lens that is designed for APS-C sensors and is capable of resolving 40 megapixels. So that, I think, that's my guess. It's my only guess as to what's going on here, as to why I'm not seeing the difference. But if that is my guess, and that is actually sort of like got any reality to it, then I'm very surprised about these two cameras, because we've had a 100 megapixel GFX camera for a very, very long time now, the original GFX100, not this one. And so I would be expecting these Fujifilm lenses to resolve 100 megapixels. Now, in terms of the ones that I have, I've got the 35-70 kind of kit zoom, if you like. It's unlikely that that is, the best lens to use with a 100 megapixel sensor. I get that. I've got the 50 here. It's a compact little walkabout lens. Again, it's probably not the best lens to use with a 100 megapixel sensor. I have got the 23 millimeter wide angle. I would hope and expect that that was designed with 100 megapixels in mind. It's a beautiful wide angle lens. But yet I'm not seeing the sort of like the detail improvement that I would expect. And then I've got a bunch of basically third-party lenses that I adapt to my GFX cameras. I use a Cambo Actus view camera attachment, and I use Mamiya lenses. And I'm not seeing the benefit of the 100 megapixel sensor at all. In hindsight, I would probably go with the 50S Mark II instead of the 100S, because the main reason why I upgraded from my 50R to this 100S was because of the IBIS inside it, because it really is so liberating to have in-body stabilization. But so maybe it is to do with the lenses. We're dealing here with a doubling in resolution. Let me know what you think, because I'm kind of running out of ideas here as to why I'm seeing so little improvement based purely on resolution. And that's why the title of this video is When Resolution Is Not Enough, because I think that there's a lot more to it than that. And I'd love to hear your comments, so please let me know what you think. Please let me know your experiences, and if there's some other tests that you think would be worthwhile for me to do while I've got these 4 cameras here, then let me know, and I'll be happy to have a go at those tests. Thanks very, very much for watching.